You're listening to Beyond the Plate with Andrew Kaplan. This sounds so weird. You're listening to Beyond the Plate with Cappy.
You cannot wake up in the morning and think about the stars. You cannot wake up in the morning and think about the review. Because if you do that, first of all, you stress yourself to death. And also, instead of being focused in what is supposedly your passion, you are distracted.
Hey everyone, this is Cappy, and you are listening to Beyond the Plate, a podcast where I sit down in person with the world's culinary elite to explore their journey into the industry and the social impact they have made in their community. Every episode, we share inspiring stories of what it means to be in today's bustling hospitality industry. For this episode, I sat down with Chef Eric Ripert, a famed seafood restaurant in New York City, Le Bernardin. In 1995, at 29 years old, Ripert earned a 4-star rating from the New York Times. 20 years later, and for the 5th consecutive time, Le Bernardin again earned the New York Times highest rating of 4 stars, becoming the only restaurant to maintain this status for this length of time without ever dropping a star. Ripert's accolades are way too long to list, but let me just give you a short taste of them. He's been the top chef in New York City and won Outstanding Chef in the United States from the James Beard Foundation. Le Bernardin has consistently held 3-star rating from the Michelin Guide, which is their highest since 2005. He is number 17 on the world's 50 best restaurants. And on La Liste, which is a worldwide restaurant review aggregator, he's number 2 in the world and number 1 in America. Ripert has had a TV show called Avec Eric. He is a regular on Anthony Bourdain's No Reservations and Parts Unknown. And we have a fun conversation of how he actually met Anthony Bourdain and how their relationship or friendship or bromance blossomed. Ripert has 6 books. Honestly, one of my favorite cookbooks on my shelf, A Return to Cooking. We talk about the influence that book had on his career. He also has a book called 32 Yolks, which is his most recent book and a New York Times bestseller. Ripert's super interesting because he's a practicing Buddhist, and we talk about the influence that has on his creativity in the kitchen. Actually, if you're a listener to Tim Ferriss' podcast, Tim Ferriss recently interviewed Eric Ripert, and they go a little bit deeper into that. We also have a really funny moment where he calls in his saucier from the kitchen, and we ask her a fun question, and she was quite nervous, rightfully so. But the main reason I wanted to interview Chef Ripert, and he's been top on my list since starting this podcast, is because of his work and dedication to City Harvest. For over 20 years, he's been involved with City Harvest, which is a food rescue group in New York City. He happens to be the vice chairman of the board of City Harvest, and he brings together a bunch of different chefs and restaurateurs to help raise money and increase the quality and quantity of food that gets delivered to hungry New Yorkers. There's a really incredible story in here about why I wanted to interview him about his work with City Harvest. So I hope you listen to this in its entirety because I think it could really change the game for chefs and food scraps and food waste. I'll stop there, but please enjoy this conversation as we go beyond the plate with Chef Eric Ripert.
So we are under Le Bernardin, and this room here is our library, war room. It's where we do all the meetings with the sous chefs for creativity. All meetings in general are in this room. And it's a long table with all those chairs around us. And then this wall has about 600 cookbooks, more or less.
If there was one cookbook I should pick out, which one would it be?
Well, one of ours.
I do have one of yours. So I wanted to start because there's 2 connections I want to make here with you. One, this was not the first, the second fine dining meal that I ever ate. I lived in New York City. I was young and was scraping up some money here and there. And my wife at the time she wasn't my wife. She's my wife now.
Yes.
She didn't eat seafood.
Oh, whoa.
And so anytime she went out of town, I said, excellent, now I could go try the seafood restaurants. So it was a weekend night, and I said, I'm going to pop into Le Bernardin, and I did. And I sat at the bar and had the menu, and I wrote down everything that I ate. and I just reread it this morning, actually, everything I ate. What I tell everyone is at the time, my menu was $109. And I said, that was the first meal that I ate. It was in 2008. I said, that was the first meal that I ate that I actually would have paid more. Like, I physically say, I would pay more for that.
You should have told us.
Yeah.
It
was
time,
incredible.
But thank you very much. It's an ultimate compliment, really.
Yeah. I mean, I remember a Moroccan spice, monkfish.
Yes.
And that changed the game for me with monkfish, quite frankly. And in my notes, I wrote, I would take this over lobster any day. That's what I wrote in my notes.
Wow, that's very nice. I mean, I really appreciate that. It's, yes, very nice of you to say that.
So my second connection here is I heard you talking in your Tim Ferriss episode, you have the things you want. And you said you have the pair of sneakers you like. So I had to bring up a sneaker story. Do you remember the sneaker story? This is going to ring a bell, and you're going to face palm in your forehead because I remind you about this almost every time I see you. It was 2003 or 4 at the South Beach Wine and Food Festival. I used to work for the South Beach Wine and Food Festival, and you were doing a cooking demo. And you had just arrived from a store called The Shop with a real, it.
Yes.
You just made a face.
Absolutely.
And you arrived with a pair of Puma shoes, and
Absolutely.
you were about to wear them on stage. That was me. I was a student at the time.
Oh my God. Yes, of course I remember.
And so you were trying them on, and we said, hey, chef, you got about 15 minutes. You ready? And then you turned in a very kind way, and you looked up to me and you said, is there someone that maybe can get me a half size smaller? And I said, and that was like a great challenge for me, like a young kid. I'm like, I got to make everything happen that I can. So I called this store called The Shop, and I said, I need this pair of shoes. There's talent on the beach and I didn't say a name, they're about to do a cooking demo. They just bought a pair of shoes. It was this pair of Pumas. Can someone meet me on the road? And they sent someone with your shoes, and I returned your shoes, and you had a brand new pair of shoes within 15 minutes.
Yes, I remember that extremely well.
It was fantastic.
It's because I had flip-flops, and I felt bad because I was like, I should not be giving a cooking class in flip-flops, although it's Miami and it's supposed to be relaxed. I was a bit conservative, and I knew exactly what I wanted, which was a pair of Puma, and I said, I need to have some real shoes for that demo. And it was a last-minute thing, and you're right.
I love this story.
You saved the day for me.
I think that was your first demo at the Wine and Food Festival.
Yes, it was.
Fantastic. I love it. All right, so I want to talk about your basically life as a chef. If I said to you, who is Eric Ripert, what do you say?
He's a human being like you and all of us. He's a guy who happens to be a chef, who's very passionate about what he does, and try to be a better man every day by day. And the rest, I don't know. People probably will give you more information than me, but this is basically my goal, to be a great human being as much as I can, and to be a great chef, a great family man. Simple.
Okay, so what if I asked some of your line cooks or sous chefs, name three, what would they say if I said 3 words that your line cooks would say about you?
That's a good question. We should bring one now.
That would be funny.
And put him on the spot and say 3 words about Chef Ripert.
Call it to the kitchen.
But we can do that if you want.
I would love to do that.
I can send someone.
All right, if you want to do.
Give me 1 second.
Perfect.
Ashley, can you send me, you want a line cook or sous chef? Or
line cook.
A line cook that worked with us for at least a year or 2. Someone at the level of saucier.
Someone on the what?
At the level of saucier.
Okay.
Anyone.
Okay.
It doesn't matter.
All right.
Okay? But you say it's rush.
Okay.
Perfect. How about some of your line cooks like back in the day? Because you have had a...
Back in the days, I was obviously at one point a young chef, and I had a very bad temper. I was very demanding with myself, but with the team as well. And I was very abusive verbally, obviously not physically, because, I mean, if you beat someone in America, first of all, you end up in jail, and I was not that bad. But I was having tantrums in the kitchen, throwing plates on the floor, believing that managing a kitchen like that was the right way, because I was emulating some of the chefs that I had been trained with and I had seen in France. And then I realized I was 100,000% wrong. And I changed overnight my views on managing a team. And I decided that to scare the cooks, to scare the waiters, was not inspirational to them. It was not a good way to manage a kitchen. We wouldn't have good results. We didn't have good results. And I spent the rest of my life changing that. And we're talking about 1991 or 92, something like that, in the 90s. So since then, I have been working effortless to make sure that the kitchen is an environment where people can blossom. And I do not tolerate abuse from anyone. Now, it happens that sometimes someone has a bad day or some of the line cooks have a temper like me when I was younger. And sometimes with the pressure, they flip. But I make sure that we are not proud of it and we don't promote this idea. And therefore, if it happens, and it happened to me sometimes, so I'm a bit rough on the edge, but not that much. But if I'm doing that, I apologize not immediately, sometimes a bit later, but I apologize on the front of the person and make sure that I showed a good example to the rest of the team.
Is that still a work in progress?
It's still a work in progress because you always have young people coming to your team. It's always a rotation. We have about 65 cooks, and therefore we have some line cooks that come here and have been trained under different circumstances, have a temper, and have a tendency to lose their cool during service and so on. So yes, it's a constant work in progress because we have to make sure that we integrate them well into our team and that they understand that being angry is not the solution. It's actually counterproductive.
Yeah. So your book, which is one of my favorite books of all time, Return to Kitchen, I didn't know the history of that. I just enjoyed it as a beautiful piece. The stories, the recipes, the people that came along with you. Was that book a turning point for you, or did something cause you to do that book?
So you're talking about a Return to Cooking?
Yeah.
Return to Cooking was in. I decided to do that book in 1999. We did it in 2000. It was published in 2001. I was under tremendous pressure at Le Bernardin. It was not easy at all to manage the kitchen. We had 4-star in a New York Times. Michelin was not here yet, and I was kind of burnt by working 6 days a week, 16 hours minimum per day. I had a lot of stress. It was not an easy time for me in 1999. Although I was not managing the kitchen in an abusive way any longer, or I was trying not to. I don't recall exactly. I may had some painful experiences for some cooks, but I think I was really, really burned. And for me, a Return to Cooking was a way to go back to my roots, which is cooking, not managing a kitchen. The idea was to study the seasons and be inspired, exactly like Vivaldi did the 4 seasons. We did the 4 seasons in cooking. And therefore, I surrounded myself with a painter, 2 photographers, a writer, which was Michael Ruhlman. And we rented 4 different houses in 4 different regions of America for about 10 days to study the seasons, of course, but to see what was going on, to have an experience. And we were starting every morning from scratch. So the painter had many blank canvas. I was going to the markets or going to the source of for the food to the farmers or anywhere I could find food. And Michael Ruhlman was documenting. The photographers were doing also whatever they would like to do, and they were actually documenting the experience. And for me, it was an important moment in my life as a professional, because until then, I was refusing to accept that I was a talented cook. I was always saying, I have zero talent, I'm not good. Although I was rewarded by the New York Times, and I had many accolades, and I had a lot of press, and each time someone was asking me about my food or about myself, I sincerely believed I was a lousy cook.
Really?
And a return to cooking was a revelation because the idea was to cook for the group, take pictures like reporters, and then the food had to be eaten. And I was doing testing menus, and in those testing menus, we were eating like 6-7 courses, and I would eat my food with the rest of the group, of course, and I was like, my God, this is good. Oh wow, this is really good. Oh wow, this is good. And I surprised myself, and then I realized that I was basically insulting my luck by saying I'm a bad cook. I said, you are gifted, and you have to recognize it. Now you have to be humble, of course, because the idea is not to have the big head, but it's to say, thank you so much for giving me the gift of cooking, and use that gift in a good way instead of like pushing it away and saying, I'm not good, because it's really not nice.
But you were cooking great food here. Clearly, you were getting the stars and reviews, and then you were making great food in a smaller setting. Like, what was it? Was it like the lesser amount of stress, and you were doing it on your own time?
Not really. I think what happened is that when we were young in France, my generation, in the kitchens, we were always insulted by the chefs, and it was a lot of abuse, verbal abuse, like I mentioned before, in many kitchens. And we will never say it's good. It was never good enough. And we never had talent. And we never had... So that stayed in me. It was basically like a precondition created by my training. And therefore, until I really did this experience, I was still conditioned by that training that was basically bringing us down. I think the idea was to break us psychologically, right? And then to rebuild us potentially as champion. And in that process, we lost so many people who had talent because they couldn't handle it. I did, but I was conditioned, and I was convinced that I had zero talent at all. So that book for me was a revelation, and it was late in my career already. It was in 2000.
Caitlin just walked into the room. Caitlin, what's your position in the kitchen?
I'm a saucier.
You're a saucier in the kitchen. And someone called up to the kitchen and said, can Caitlin come down? And you probably had like a walk where you've been thinking the whole time, what the hell does chef need from me? What did I do wrong? Exactly. And then you're sitting here. This is incredible. This is not a test. Right. There's no right or wrong answer. Well, maybe there's a right or wrong answer. There's no right or wrong answer. No. I've been chatting with Chef Ripert, and I had asked him, who is Eric Ripert? So he was talking about himself. And then I said, if I were to ask one of your cooks in what 3 words they would use to describe you, what would they say? And here we are.
I heard you say humble earlier, so I'm gonna use that one.
Okay.
I definitely think Chef Ripert is humble.
We have 2 more to go. But thank you for the first one.
I'm trying to think of like a nicer word for serious. Like when he comes into the kitchen, like his presence is known always, but it's not like a scary. It's just okay. Everybody, top of your game. It isn't like a.
It isn't like a uh-oh. Is everything okay type thing?
Right.
That was a sentence. It's why I brought you, because I couldn't answer. 3 words is tough.
Talented?
That works.
Is that not too
obvious?
No,
that's fair.
his palate is incredible when he tastes my sauces, and he immediately knows like the exact method of how I did it.
That's
and
crazy.
He tells me like, okay, so you did this, but you need to do this instead.
Yeah.
Like earlier this morning with a duck sauce, he said I used too much stock. The ratio of bones to stock was off. I did too much stock and not enough bones to get that solid duck flavor.
And he knew that just from like taking
Exactly.
like a tasting spoon.
Yes. Or when I need to add a certain aromatic because it is too powerful or not powerful enough in the process.
Amazing. Thank you for
So
your
precise.
time. Precise. Yeah. Thank you for your time.
Okay.
I
Thank
appreciate
you very
it.
much. I'm sorry
And
about
you're in
that.
the clear. We didn't mean to like. I can imagine that 90-second walk down here to the basement. You were probably like, "Oh my God, what did I do?"
Thank you so much. I hope those were satisfactory.
You're great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good service.
Thank you.
So
Now we have an answer.
now we have an answer. I love that. Real stuff here. I'm diving around here. This is fantastic. Okay, so we talked about awards. So you're in World's 50 Best Restaurants. Your top reviews from New York Times for so many years running. Top reviews from Michelin. Yet at one point you didn't believe you were a good cook, but I'm just taking out my phone because I want the calculator. I want to know. So let's just take, how many years have you been?
I came to Le Bernardin in 1991.
91. So
June 11, 7:40 a.m. Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, because I look at my watch, I knew it was something special. You know, I had a few moments in my life when I knew it was something important in my life, and that one was one of those moments. And I said to myself, I need to look at the time and I need to remember, because, I don't know, this place has something special, or it's going to be something special. And I look at the clock and it was 7:40.
That's incredible. So let's just take 25 years. And let's just say, how many days a year are you open?
Well, we open about 300 days a year.
25 years times
Right, about
300
that.
days a year is 7,500
Maybe a bit
days.
more, 300, yes.
Let's just use a round number to how many plates, how many people are here in a day, times how many plates the course is. I'm just
See,
going to
it's
use a
very-
low number.
It's very difficult to calculate because we sell a lot of tasting menus.
Right.
So one tasting menus in between if you start from the canapés to the petit four, plus the 7-8 course, you're talking about 9 different plates for one person. And if you sell at night maybe about 60, 70, 80 tasting menus, you multiply 80 by 9, and you have 720 plates just for those people. And then you have people eating prefix, you have people in the lounge, you have people at the bar, we have people in private events with different kitchens. We do have 3 kitchens at Le Bernardin, and we have a rotation of the cooks going to all the kitchens. They're never in the same kitchen. So basically we cross-train the team. We have 65 cooks, and then we bring sometimes some help for the day if we have a lot of private events. But if you are someone who's cleaning the plates, you see a lot of plates on a daily basis, that's for sure.
I'm going to venture to say that you've put out over 5 million plates of food since you stepped in here on June 11th at 7:40 a.m. Over 5 million plates of food.
I would say with the team.
Of course.
With the team, of course.
Yeah.
I have days off, I have vacations, I do a few trips. So it's, yes, Le Bernardin has and still serve a lot of plates on a daily basis.
You keep the highest ratings plate after plate after plate with all these reviews and ratings. And at one point, you basically said these accolades it didn't confirm you were a good chef. Do these accolades now, do they matter to you? Do you celebrate them?
Yes, we celebrate the accolades. It's very important for the team first of all, because it's an official way of them to be rewarded, not only from their supervisor or from myself, but it's basically recognition that comes from the outside world. I get a lot of compliments from the clients, but they never hear it because they are in a kitchen or they are busy serving or busy in offices and so on. But when they see the review or when they see the ratings and so on, for them it means a lot. And for me, of course, it means a lot. I don't take any awards or rewards for granted. But I teach the team how not to be obsessed with the ratings, and you cannot wake up on a morning and think about the stars. You cannot wake up on a morning and think about the review. Because if you do that, first of all, you stress yourself to death. And also, instead of being focused in what is supposedly your passion, you are distracted. And you're not living fully the experience of what it is to work in a place like Le Bernardin or at this level of cooking. And I always make these analogies, like if you're an actor and you think about winning the Oscar or an Emmy, you forget about what you're supposed to do on the front of the camera, acting. And you don't even have the pleasure of acting. You're just thinking about the Oscar. And therefore, you will never get your Oscar. And it's the same for us. I think if we are distracted or if we are thinking about something else than being creative, creating a very special experience, giving the best food we can, and living our passion, all those accolades will disappear. So until we see it, we don't think about it. Now, when the Michelin comes out, I don't say that 1 or 2 nights before I sleep well. But the rest of the year, I'm really, really not thinking about it. And I understand the importance of it for the restaurant, for the life of the restaurant, for the spirit of the restaurant, for the economics of a restaurant. I mean, to be at the top means that it's almost guaranteed that business is going to be great. If you lose those stars, if you lose the good reviews, well, it's going to have some negative consequences, and it's no doubt about it. But again, you cannot let that fear paralyze you. So therefore, we are making sure that on a daily basis we ignore that.
Well, I wish so many more chefs and restaurants just took a snippet of that mentality, and I would love to be in some of your pre-shift service meetings where you guys are talking about that.
You can always join us.
How do you keep up with today's food world? Well, kind of a two-parter. How do you keep up with today's food world, and are there any younger chefs that you keep your eye on, or is it more of a holistic approach?
Well, first of all, the cooking of Le Bernardin is based on experience, which means by living in New York, we are a New York restaurant. Therefore, we are inspired by the community that lives in New York and its many cultures and ethnicities. And therefore, we see different techniques, eat different ingredients, learn different techniques just by being in New York. All of us, the team and myself, we do that naturally. And then I happen to travel for vacation or for inspiration. I just come back from Japan and I'm extremely inspired by what I saw in Japan. That comes in some ways into the menu slowly, in some dishes with some flavors from where I'm coming from. When I go to Spain, suddenly I'm extremely Spanish. When I go to Italy, I'm Italian. When I go to France, and I'm still French, obviously by default, since I am French. It's always in me, but I bring those influence into our menu. Then we work with a team. So in creativity, we use in that team the talent of sous chefs. Sous chefs are employees who have been to all the stations of the restaurant, including the saucier, which is the most important station. And they understand the spirit and the style of Le Bernardin. And we have a small team of 2 gentlemen, and sometimes it's a lady, doesn't matter, but right now we have 2 gentlemen in creativity full-time that work with me. And then we have in this room actually weekly meetings with the entire team of sous chefs. And we exchange ideas, and we basically work with the creative team that has all day long to experiment and work with me at times, because obviously I'm not with them all day. I see them a couple of times a day, and we try the food and we see what we can adapt and so on. So it's a collaboration. It's a teamwork that creates ultimately the menu of Le Bernardin. And of course, I'm the oldest. I'm the one who's supposed to be the wisest. And ultimately, I'm the one who's basically giving the stamp of approval on whatever goes to the menu.
You talked in the Tim Ferriss interview about your interview protocol and staging and whatnot with your line cooks and how that works. And you all seem pretty particular, but it seems like you have a good formula. You hear so much in the industry these days about people complaining about the lack of resumes or the lack of people. Are you guys feeling that, or not as much?
No, we're very lucky that we have a lot of resumes. We have a lot of young people who are interested to come here for the experience. They come from schools, they come recommended by chefs, sometimes they come on their own, and we don't have any problem to find young people who are motivated and have talent.
That's excellent to hear.
Now, they're not necessarily fully trained and knowledgeable. This is our job to do that, to bring the knowledge to them, to share the know-how. They're here to learn from us, and they know that. And it's a good dynamic. If you work at Le Bernardin, and it's not easy because we are very demanding, in return, we guarantee you that we will do our best to share with you all the knowledge that we have accumulated in our lifetime.
I feel like you should do a book that, I know you're just coming off of a book, but I know books are not easy. You should do a book that is, so there's cookbooks and kitchen books, and then there's front of house books, and Danny Meyer has a service book, and Charlie Trotter had one. I feel like you should do a kitchen service book.
That would be interesting.
People talk about service and hospitality in front of house, but there's something to be had for what you're discussing right now. And I think it's easy for people to say, there's no help, or I get these cooks and they're not motivated. Well, are you motivating them? Are you giving them the tools to perform?
I mean, it's like a cook when he complains that he didn't perform well because of his knives, or because the pan was not right, or the fire was not hot. Ultimately, it's his responsibility. He's blaming it on something else. And I think when chefs are complaining about the lack of knowledge, or the lack of motivation, or the lack of employees on the market, they have to think about themselves a little bit. And maybe they have a part of responsibility in the process.
There's a chef, Lee Wolin, in Chicago, who has Boca Restaurant in Somerset now, and I've talked about him before on this podcast, but he has a cook at his new restaurant. He always talks about how there's not a ton of help out there. And he has a cook at his new restaurant that was a manager at McDonald's. He's training her, and he said she's kicking ass on Garde Manger right now.
That's fantastic.
I think it's amazing.
Yeah, it's about motivating people who have already that fire to succeed. And when we hire them, also we are very cautious. We want to make sure that they have the potential. Some people are being a cook or a chef, it's not about being the smartest and it's a lot of people who are extremely intelligent and have a lot of talents, but they're not meant to be in a kitchen, or not meant to work in a restaurant. And those people have to be discouraged to go in a kitchen and spend years. If it's no good outcome for them, it's better for them to be redirected to something else. When we select our team, we are very cautious, and we have to make sure, and it's what we do on almost a daily basis, that we can see something positive for them with us here, because it's our responsibility to make sure they succeed in their vision.
What was the last restaurant experience that stopped you in your tracks or that wowed you? Anywhere.
I was 2 weeks ago in Tokyo. I went to Ryujin. I was blown away. I was just like in heaven. 16 covers, very intimate, small setting, beautiful china, everything beautiful. And the food was so refined. I had an amazing experience in that place. And I was very happy.
Yeah. That's good.
Happy for myself, but also happy for the team that was working around me in the dining room and for the chef and for his team.
Lightening it up a little bit here. Many chefs, including Mr. Bourdain, have done food TV, right? You've done Avec Eric.
Yes.
What's your take, be honest, what's your take on chefs and TV?
I have no problem about chefs and TV. First of all, I think for the chefs, it's pretty good to be able to go on TV because 40, 50 years ago, it was almost none of them on TV. Some chefs have different talents, and some chefs are entertaining on TV, and people watch them for the entertainment. Some chefs try to be inspirational. Some chefs try to share techniques. At the end of the day, everybody has the choice to switch channel or to follow a chef or not. Whoever has success on TV or whoever is on television, I think is doing his best to communicate whatever is their vision. Now, some chefs are not my style at all, and some chefs inspire me, and some chefs are not too interesting to me, but I respect all of them tremendously because they're really working hard. Television is not a walk in a park. It's not easy.
It is not. What chefs inspire you?
Well, you talk about Anthony Bourdain. I think what Anthony is doing is pretty amazing because he's on CNN now with Parts Unknown. It takes you with him in destinations that are not necessarily something that you will go for. I mean, last week was Nigeria. First of all, it's difficult to go to Nigeria and to have connections and to see as much as on the show. And it shows you an aspect of the country that is cultural, historical. Of course, the food is the common thread in a story. But to me, it's remarkable because the images are beautiful. The narrative is very interesting. He does his own writes and says obviously his own voiceover. And I'm very inspired by his show.
How'd you meet him?
I met Anthony in 2000 when he wrote Kitchen Confidential. And as you know, it was scandalous and it was a huge success. And a lot of clients said, you are all over the book with, Le Bernardin. And I was like, no, I don't know. And then I read the book and he was very complimentary of Le Bernardin. I invited him for lunch. So I called him at Les Halles and said, thank you so much, and I would love to invite you and meet you. And the friendship started to develop like that.
What 3 words would you use to describe Anthony Bourdain?
Noble, honest, curious, and there's many other words. Of course, talented. And actually, Anthony is a very good cook.
Yeah.
He was a chef before. And when he cooks something, and he has done that many times for me, his food is really, really delicious.
Okay, so you're a practicing Buddhist.
Yes, I do.
How has that changed your life?
Well, it has changed my life completely. I started to be interested in Buddhism when I came to America in 1989. It took me until the late 90s to understand a little bit better the philosophy of Buddhism and practice more. And today I practice on a daily basis, and it has changed completely my life and my vision of life and understanding of life. And what is interesting in Buddhism is that it is a religion, if you wish. It is a philosophy, if you wish. And it is a science as well. And it's very interesting because you can explain Buddhism through science and therefore in a secular way. And it's of course, I mean not of course, but it's a non-dogmatic philosophy. And that for me is very interesting. And it's explaining, I mean, I have a certain degree of comprehension, which is limited, obviously, compared to many Buddhist masters. And I am not a master, I'm a student. Let's put it right away on the table. But it's helping me tremendously to understand all phenomena of life. And it's motivating me to be a better human being on a daily basis. And of course, I make mistakes, and of course, I'm not better than anyone else. I'm just motivated, and I win small battles after small battles, and I still have a lot of challenges. And Buddhism for me is definitely an instrument, a way of getting where I want to be.
How has it helped your creative process?
In terms of creativity, it helps because if you meditate, mindfulness, you basically train your mind to concentrate. And concentration, I think, in creativity is key. Mindfulness also is very important because you don't let your mind go all over the place. You basically stay focused. And I think it's helping in creativity because in creativity you have to go to the root of what's going to potentially become a dish. And you have to be obviously focused to not lose the spirit of your vision. So Buddhism, it's helping me that way for creativity.
Can you give us a Buddhism or meditation 101? I mean, like Headspace, the app is very popular right now. I use that. I've been using it for a little over a year. I love it. I do it. I try to do it every morning. I should probably do it for longer. But
the time is not necessarily something that we should focus on. I think when you put time on your meditation, when you say, I'm going to meditate 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half hour, you're putting pressure on yourself. It's better to not think about it. It doesn't matter. I think if you do 3 minutes that are really productive, very meaningful, it's better than trying to do 10 minutes and have a clock or looking at your watch or having in your back of your mind that timetable. I have the tendency to go in meditation every morning, and I do 2 types of meditation, shamatha and vipassana. So shamatha is basically called single point meditation, is when you focus in a present and try to have your mind not thinking about the future, neither the past. And it doesn't mean that you don't think. You're very aware of what's around you, but you discipline yourself to not, like I mentioned previously, travel in time. You are fully here. And when you do that, you are prepared to go to the next step in meditation, which is basically guided meditation, which we call vipassana. And guided meditation can be an exercise that is totally secular, or it can be an exercise that is religious or spiritual. It all depends. But in my case, I do single point meditation, which is basically being mindful and being in the present for a little bit. And then when my mind is calm, I go to the next guided meditation or I decide a topic and I go into it. And that's what I do every morning.
So I feel like I have the monkey mind often.
We all do.
Which you explain as thinking about the past or the future, and it's more so about being in the present. But I feel like I do these guided meditations, and sometimes, like you're saying, like the first few minutes I do it, I'm in such a calm, clear place, Sometimes it's the last 3 minutes, sometimes it's in between, but I feel like I starts thinking of other things as I'm doing it.
One of the exercises to help to stay in the present is to basically position yourself as a spectator of yourself. And when you have a thought, think about, oh, Eric had a thought. And not feel guilty about it or not feel good about it. It's just about acknowledging that your mind was wandering and go back to not wonder. And if another thought comes, you acknowledge that you had another one. And by doing that, you basically, of course, it's a repetitive process day after day, years after years. But by doing that, it helps you to really be in the present and to concentrate. And it has a lot of benefits.
Yeah. You have a meditation room at home, right?
I do have the luxury to have a meditation room.
How long have you had that? Or is it?
I have this meditation room since 2010. So we are in for 7 years.
Last night when I was falling asleep, I had come up with some content, but obviously it's the night before I chat with you and I'm thinking of, topics. And in my head, I'm like, maybe I'll turn my office at home into a meditation room. We'll see.
You can. Look, I'm very lucky that my family is supporting my idea of having a space for basically myself, not in a selfish way, but it's a space that the family respect. And because I'm Buddhist, I have some Buddhas and probably too many. You're not supposed to be attached and collect. I have some paintings, and tankas are basically sacred paintings and have a meaning as well. But in that room, I have a lot of artifacts that are related to Buddhism and that inspire me. It's a peaceful environment, of course. And again, it's a great luck to have that. It's basically luxury to have that space.
Speaking of family, you have a family tradition with your son. I
have many traditions with him.
I think there was the Sunday dinner tradition.
Yes.
Can you share a little bit about that?
For sure. Especially when my son was younger. Now he's 14 years old. But Sunday night we eat at home. And I'm the cook. So it's no chef. And I decide the menu depending on the season, of course, and of what is available and inspiration. But what I'm cooking at home is basically home cooking. It's not a Le Bernardin experience, or rarely it's something at that level, but something that is satisfying, nourishing, healthy, nutritious, delicious. And I spend some time shopping, and I spend some time obviously cooking in the kitchen. And when my son was younger, to motivate him about liking the idea of having a dinner and so on, he was in charge of setting up the table and decorating as much as he could decorate it, make it beautiful for a celebration. And then at the same time, he was in charge of writing the menu. And also, I was giving him the freedom to choose the theme.
That's a full experience.
So therefore, he was thinking about eating Chinese, eating Spanish, eating French, eating whatever he wanted. And I will cook that kind of food with the limited knowledge or more knowledge, depending on which culture he will choose. He will do those very nice menu, and he will write the best he could and decorate the menus and then do the table, and we will light the candles and we will spend time like that. Today he doesn't write the menus anymore, but he's in charge of setting up the table and making sure that we have a very good experience, a family moment that is very happy for all of us.
Is there a dish you make, a dish you cook that makes your wife happy?
I think it's a lot of dishes that makes her happy because she loves food. But coq au vin, it's probably the dish that she asked me the most. And I make coq au vin now in October, November, December, when it's cold outside. Sometimes she asks for the coq au vin in the summer, and I'm like, no, let's do something lighter. But I love to braise meat, and it's a process, and the house smells good, and it's of course delicious. So coq au vin is probably, yes, one of her favorite.
So I'm going to go to a fun speed round of questions.
Okay.
First thing that comes to your head.
Yes.
What did you have for dinner last night?
I don't eat at night.
No?
No, I have a big lunch, and then I test food all day long in small quantities, and I do not have dinner. So last night I was at a restaurant. I ate probably the equivalent of 3 enormous plates, but in small bites and small tastes.
Yeah, interesting. When was the last time you ate fast food?
I do not eat fast food. I mean, if pizza is fast food, which I don't consider fast food.
Yeah.
Last weekend I had pizza, but to me it's not fast food.
Yeah. Name a smell in the kitchen you love.
I love the smell of truffles. White and black truffles. They're very different, but I love them.
Name a smell in the kitchen you hate.
Well, we are a seafood restaurant. If something is fishy, I really hate it.
Yeah, that's good. That's good to hear. What pisses you off in the kitchen?
I don't get pissed off. I get frustrated. What will definitely frustrate me the most is to see someone who's not respectful of others and of the space and the products.
What makes you happy in the kitchen?
What makes me happy is when the food is good, and we have a good rhythm, and everybody is doing his duty and his focus and is having fun.
You land in France. What is your first stop for food?
I'm not predictable. It's not like I go to the French bakery and I have a pain au chocolat, or I go to buy a saucisson. Or it all depends. The last time I was in France, you'll be shocked by my answer. I had this crazy idea of eating Chinese food. And I went to the Peninsula Hotel have lunch, because I was waiting for my room in another hotel. And they have a very nice Chinese restaurant I wanted to try. And I went to eat Chinese, and then I was scratching my head, and I was like, I am in Paris and I'm eating Chinese. This is nuts.
That's funny.
Then, of course, I ate a French dinner,
Yeah.
and I went to Guy Savoy, and I had a fantastic meal and so on. But I'm not necessarily preconditioned.
Yeah. What actor would you want to play Eric Ripert in a movie?
Some people have asked me, and I don't really have an answer. I hope it's a guy who's not a villain.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you. When I was coming up with a list of people who I would like to chat with for this podcast, you were right up top. And there's a very big reason for that. I've been on the Leadership Council and the Food Council and whatnot for City Harvest for many years. And I know you're a big part of City Harvest, which is a food rescue organization here in New York City. Here's the incredibly shocking and unbelievable moment. One night when I lived in New York, went out on a route with a City Harvest truck driver. And we went to, little markets and restaurants. And then they said, our next stop is Le Bernardin. And I said, the hell are you picking up from Le Bernardin? I want to eat that food. What are you picking up from Le Bernardin? And I followed the driver in, and you had a stand-alone freezer in the basement that they would go in, and there was food scraps and bread from the end of the night and things like that. And this was 10 years ago.
Yeah, it's actually a fridge, not a freezer.
It's a fridge.
It's a fridge, yeah.
I still talk about it to this day. And I think you set an extraordinary example for your commitment to City Harvest and beyond. Can you explain more why City Harvest and about this relationship?
Well, we are in New York City, the financial capital of the world. I'm working in a restaurant that is a luxury restaurant. We feed people who have enough money to pay a substantial bill. Either way, they're very wealthy, or they save money, but they're not starving, or they know when they're going to have their next meal, You have a huge community in New York City, close to the richest community that is in need. And we're talking about 1.3 million people. One child out of 4, when he doesn't have school, doesn't know when he's going to have his next meal. And City Harvest mission is basic and logical. They pick up food that will go to waste, that is nutritious, fresh, very often delicious, and that food is about to go in the garbage, and they pick it up and they bring it a couple of blocks from where the food has been picked up, or sometimes it goes to the facility. And that food, instead of being thrown away, goes to people in need. And I feel that it's a moral obligation to be part of a process like that, to avoid waste as much as we can and make sure that the community in need is benefiting from that. So City Harvest pickups from supermarkets and restaurants and many outlets in New York City that give them food. But City Harvest also pick up food from large companies. And like if they make yogurt, for instance, and it's the last day for the sales of the yogurt, and they have sometimes hundreds, thousands of yogurts unsold, City Harvest makes sure they pick it up, bring it to the facility, distribute it to people. Some farmers sometimes have some fruits that are ripe and they're delicious, but the supermarket don't want them because they're ripe and the shelf will be short. We pick up those fruits and vegetables, whatever we can, and we redistribute it. I mean, City Harvest, redistribute it in a city. They have 22 trucks and 2 trailers. And on a daily basis, they serve thousands of pounds of food. Basically, per year, we're talking about 55 million pounds of food distributed to people. And if 1 pound is about a meal, it's basically 55 million meals, just for the city of New York City, of food that would have been lost.
Yeah. Was there a certain moment or more
Yes,
so as a whole?
It was a certain moment. I was coming out of Le Bernardin and I had a good night and it was a successful night. And clients were happy, the kitchen was happy, and just outside I could see people sitting down like homeless people, and they were obviously in need. And it hit me in the head, and I was like, oh my God, it's such a contrast. I cannot stay passive about that. And I was looking for an organization that will help people in need. City Harvest doesn't feed homeless people necessarily. City Harvest feed a lot of people who live in New York City, have jobs, have families, children, but they just can't pay the rent and send the kids to school and buy clothes and bring food on the table. And therefore they need some help. And City Harvest is doing that. And someone recommended to me 20-something years ago, almost 25 years ago, to be involved with City Harvest. And that was for me like a blessing. I felt really good about it.
One of the main reasons I started this podcast was to get stories like that out there, because if one chef somewhere says, that's it, we need to keep our scraps and give it to a food bank or shelter, like that's what this is about for me, for real. So
yes, for sure.
Thank you for sharing that. Do you mentor your cooks in this sense, or do you leave it to them to do something that they care about in terms of giving back?
No, we definitely share our vision of not wasting food that will be potentially given to someone in need. We make sure that the cooks are aware, and we give them all the tools to save the food that is not served at Le Bernardin at the end of the day, and that will not be served tomorrow. Sometimes it's just like string beans that are perfect, but in a 4-star restaurant, tomorrow it's not the standard that I'm looking for, but they're delicious. At home, I will eat them, and I want to make sure that those string beans are not going to waste, to the garbage. And we give all the tools to the cooks to put them in boxes and storage them and so on. And we make sure that they are sensitive to fighting waste in a kitchen. And then the cooks by themselves bring boxes and bags of food into the fridge dedicated to City Harvest.
So they're all aware of it. That's
and we have some reminders during the year, and we make sure that they're sensitive to that. And I think they are very sensitive to that.
Thank you again. Looking back on your career, what would you want people to say about the career of Eric Ripert?
He lived his passion fully and had no regrets, and left an interesting legacy. That's ambitious.
Chef, thank you. I appreciate
Thank you
the
very
time.
much. My pleasure.
Thank you. Quote, I have a certain degree of comprehension, which is limited compared to many Buddhist masters. It's motivating me to be a better human being on a daily basis. And of course, I make mistakes. And of course, I'm not better than anyone else. I'm just motivated. And I win small battles after small battles, and I still have a lot of challenges. And Buddhism for me is definitely an instrument, a way of getting where I want to be. Thanks again to Chef Eric Ripert. Find more on him at ericripert.com or le-bernardin.com. That's le-bernardin.com. Join us next week when Beyond the Plate presents Just the Plate, a short segment where chefs describe a recipe, sharing insider tips on what makes this specific dish meaningful to them. Chef Ripert walks you through his seared tuna with a soy ginger vinaigrette and baby bok choy. Ripert is arguably the best seafood chef in this country, so you may not want to miss this one. You may find me and keep up to date with this podcast across all social media platforms at On Cappy's Plate or go to BeyondThePlatePodcast.com. Follow us on Twitter at BTPlatePodcast, and we also have a Facebook page. This episode was produced by myself along with Ian Cohen, Joe Yeaton, and Shant Petrosian. Big thank yous all around. Our music has been composed by Goldford. Find him at iGoldford. A big thank you to my wife Katie, who's been helping me with this podcast before Beyond the Plate was Beyond the Plate. Please rate, review, or subscribe to this podcast on your listening site of choice. Thank you for listening to Beyond the Plate. I'm Cappy, and remember, there are never too many cooks in the kitchen.